Okay, good morning, everybody. I've been asked to speak into this microphone. If you can't really see me, that's I've been asked to speak into this microphone so that the recording records my introduction. So I just want to welcome all of you and introduce our speaker, who is Dr. Deepa Patel, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Anesthesia here at McMaster, specializing in pediatric anesthesiology and pediatric pain. So I'll just give you a little bit of a background on her before we turn the table over to her to present her talk. So Dr. Patel completed her anesthesia residency at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, Illinois. And this was followed by a fellowship in pediatric anesthesia at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland. She subsequently practiced as a pediatric anesthesiologist and pediatric pain specialist at Johns Hopkins before coming to McMaster. She also holds the Master's of Health Sciences, the graduate training program in clinical investigations from the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and her research interest is in pediatric pain management. She has quite an expertise in social media and its use in academia, and so we're really looking forward to your presentation, Deepa, on Twitter and the anesthesiologist establishing leadership through social media. And it is one talk that you are going to be encouraged to take out your phones and use it. So I'll turn it over to you, Deepa.
Okay, thanks everyone. So Dr. Paul invited me to talk today because when we were at one of a meeting last year, I asked him, are you going to tweet? And he had no idea what I was talking about. And he looked at his phone and he's like, oh, I have Twitter, but he's like, I have no idea how to use it. But fortunately, he's not here today. I think our social media in our department is not too active. So I'm hoping today after presenting that we can get more people on here because there are many reasons to use Twitter. Aside from talking about watching cat videos and posting things about your kids, there's a lot of academic use to Twitter. Coming from Johns Hopkins, they're very, very active in social media, and a lot of the anesthesia presence on Twitter is actually a lot of the people I work with in Baltimore. So I just wanted to go through different aspects of Twitter, but also the downfalls, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm all gung-ho about social media. There are some negative aspects, especially what we see in our youth and the millennial generation. And I know a lot of our trainees are millennials, so I think as for those of us who are beyond that generation, it's good to understand the culture because all our trainees now are growing up, many of them who have always had social media in their life, and it's a part of their life. So just in case, make sure everyone got the rounds code, and there is a shortcut to getting the attendance. You can actually just send a blank email. It's easier than logging on to the actual website. If you guys have tried that. Okay, so before I start, I wanted to do a poll. And you guys will need your phones for this. Okay, so I just want to know who is on Twitter right now. So there are two ways to do this. You can text my name to that number, or you can just go to pollev.com/Deepa on your web browser and either choose A, B, or C. I just want to know who's actually using anything. And if you send text my name to that number, it'll reply back to you, and then you can answer A, B, or C. And it should be live, so as you guys answer, it should be popping up on the screen.
So we text Deepa?
Yeah, and then I'll reply to you. For those of you who teach, this website's actually a really good tool for teaching as well. You can actually even do quizzes that the students learners can answer through their phone, so it's kind of fun to use. Okay, everyone's answered? Okay, so kind of like what I expected, well, 30% of people use Twitter. Great. So hopefully today we can increase that number to at least 50%. I know everyone's self-selected by coming to Grand Rounds today. I'm assuming the ones who absolutely don't have any interest in show up today. So hopefully you guys, some of you are on the border. Okay. Okay, so just a quick overview of what social media is. I'm assuming that there might be some people here who have no idea what it is at all. It's just a way, it's interactive computer-mediated technology that facilitates creation, sharing of information, ideas, career interests, form of expression via virtual communities and networks. And the most popular platforms now are Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn for professional use, and there's always new ones popping up as well. So kind of the evolution of social media. So kind of interesting for me because I was born around here, so it's been around my entire life, but it's really taken off. When I see this AOL, I don't know if you guys remember like the dial-up modem and all that stuff, so we've come a really long way. But a lot of it's really happened in the last 10 years, and it's just exploded now. I'm going to go through all the political issues with social media, how it's basically changing our world as well. And you can see a lot of stuff that was there initially has kind of disappeared. So I think now Facebook and Twitter have kind of established themselves. I don't think they're going to be going anywhere. And they are quite powerful at this time, and including buying out other companies that tend to have some kind of market share. Okay, so just some fun facts. So in the world right now, and I know for sure this is true in India, more people own mobile devices than toothbrushes. Like everyone has cell phones now. I know in India the data plans are actually cheaper than here. You can get like 12 gigs for, I don't know, like 50 rupees. And technically, if you think about population-wise, Facebook is actually the largest country in the world right now. There's 2.27 billion users. The biggest groups that are increasing are not North America. It's actually developing countries like India, Asia. The use is just exploding, and it's had a lot of effect on their political and social issues that are happening there. So they're estimating by 2018 that 2.44 billion people will be on social networks, and that's amazing considering that it was only 970,000 about 8 years ago. It's not just changing the way we communicate, it's changing the world around us. So some big issues that have been really affected with social media, especially with the fact that all of us now carry a camera in our pocket. For example, the Black Lives Matter, when I lived in the States, people are recording things. Things are becoming more open now. I was in Baltimore during the Freddie Gray case, which was horrendous, but the fact that that was videotaped really brought, we had riots in Baltimore, we had the National Guard outside our hospital, so it was a really big deal. It's changing a lot of things now. Of course, the Me Too movement is now happening. A lot of the social traction is now also coming over into women's issues with academic medicine as well. I don't know if you guys are on Twitter now, the new thing is if there's any meeting where there's a panel of men, there'll always be someone who's going to point it out and do #manel. So manel means a panel of speakers where it's all men, no women at all. And people are noticing it. People who are, even in anesthesia meetings, are not anesthesia people who will find these pictures and will publicize it. So I think societies and associations are being aware that they need to diversify their speakers, give opportunities to people who may not have got opportunities. I know at the last Society of Pediatric Anesthesia meeting, every single panel was not a manel. And also in some areas like psychology, it's the opposite. WANLs, it's all women, so just making an effort to include everyone. Another big campaign that was social media related, ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, was huge. They raised $115 million. Celebrities were involved, dumping ice on each other. It got to the point that the ALS Society is worried they can never replicate that kind of fundraising, but it was pretty phenomenal. And of course, we know that social media has brought Donald Trump's popularity, and probably his ability to be elected was definitely fueled by social media, and he's probably the most prolific tweeter right now. With single tweets in the middle of the night, he can change the world at this point. So I wanted to just go through another big campaign that's actually happening right now. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. It's the #ThisIsOurLane. This all happened in the last 30 days, so I thought it'd be a really great issue to present to all of you. So on October 30th, in the Annals of Internal Medicine, there was a position paper published by physicians talking about firearm injuries and deaths in the United States. I know, living in the States recently, I'm pretty up to date with the politics, but just to let everyone know, in the United States, even though gun violence is an epidemic, the CDC and the political all the political organizations have basically defunded and prevented any research into gun violence. So I was at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. There's a Center for Gun Violence. They have no funding. They have no access to data about deaths, nothing at all. It's just a black hole. And the physicians now are saying, this is an epidemic. People are dying all the time. Last month, a physician was murdered in our own hospital in the parking lot because of domestic violence. And physicians now are demanding that this has to change. So they published a position paper, and that was on October 30th. And then about a week later, the NRA tweeted this out. They wrote, "Someone should tell self-important anti-gun doctors to stay in their lane. Half of the articles in that journal are pushing for gun control. Most upsetting, however, the medical community seems to have consulted no one but themselves." So this was tweeted out, and it's resulted in a lot of social media tweets by physicians. A lot of trauma surgeons are tweeting pictures of what it really looks like to take care of trauma victims. A lot of bloody scrubs, bloody shoes. The picture here is actually showing a bullet wound in someone's heart. MRIs of bullets in people's heads, and I'm sure many of us experience pooling of blood when you're taking care of these horrible trauma cases. And in the States, in big cities, I've lived in Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, these are every daily incidents that these are happening. And I thought that top right picture was very poignant because I know I've finished cases where the room looks like that and you just walk away thinking, what just happened here? So this is a daily occurrence in the States. And this was, kind of representative of what the physicians were saying, that this is our lane. Don't tell us not to interfere, and it's become a huge social media campaign. So just to explain some verbiage behind Twitter. So impressions means that if you tweet something, it's the number of people who would have seen that tweet. So altogether, 235 million people have seen all the tweets related to this hashtag, which is pretty phenomenal. There have been 95,000 tweets and 54,000 people participating in this. And this is not just physicians. These are parents, people who believe in this type of policy, and also including parents who also had children lost to gun violence. So Dr. Joseph Sakharine actually wrote this hashtag. He's actually the head of trauma surgery at Johns Hopkins. The interesting part about him, and there's actually a podcast that came out last week, is really fascinating. He was shot as a 17-year-old in the throat by a stray bullet. Two teenagers were fighting. He was sitting on a bench. He got shot in the neck. He actually was saved by a vascular surgeon, a trauma surgeon at the local hospital, went through rehab, had tracheal reconstruction, a tracheostomy, then ended up going to medical school, became a trauma surgeon. So when he tweeted out something, it was very personal. I mean, he basically said, you cannot tell me this is not my lane. I'm a victim, and now I'm a physician. And you can see here, within a month, they're already at Capitol Hill fighting to get funding for all this type of gun research. And he's kind of become the face of this movement right now. And these are some other physicians, all using that same hashtag. So a short little hashtag can be the face of a movement when it comes to social media. So I just want to go through, many of you who are not on Twitter might be wondering, okay, what is the use for us as physicians and in academia? So I want to break it down into 4 categories: knowledge, being thought leaders, engaging with patients and the public, and maintenance of our professional profiles. And I know for a lot of us now in anesthesia, we try to go beyond just being in the operating room, just intubating. And a lot of us have moved on to other areas. Anesthesia as a specialty is now becoming more visible, especially with patient safety, the opioid epidemic. A lot of us are now coming out of the OR and doing more work. And if you're wanting to have more visibility, social media is a great way to do so. So I'm going to start off with the knowledge aspect of it. So right now, every single year, there are more and more journals coming out, more and more papers being published. And as of 2014, there's actually 28,100 active scholarly peer-reviewed journals. So how do you keep up with all this literature coming out? How do you figure out, you can't sit there and read every journal. So how do you curate the topics of interest in articles that may be beneficial for your knowledge? And you can see here in the chart, from 1950 to 2010, the trajectory of how publications are going, and that's just going to go up because now we're looking at even predatory journals, ones where you can pay for open access, so it's going to just keep going up, up, and up. Everything's going to get published. And the funny thing is, they actually say for a lot of papers, sometimes the authors are the only ones who read it. So social media is also a good way to promote your own research if you do get published. So I will go through all the different terms in Twitter, but the main thing is hashtags. Hashtag means that you can group tweets by topic. For example, for me, I do peds anesthesia, so the hashtag peds anest is a very, very popular hashtag on Twitter right now. There are a lot of pediatric anesthesiologists. So we use that. You press the button, and then you basically will only see all the topics which are pertaining to pediatric anesthesia. And I'll go through it on my phone and show you guys how to do it as well. So an example of the type of tweets, if you haven't been on Twitter, that I think are actually pretty beneficial. So this is actually one of my former residents from Hopkins. If, for example, new guidelines came out, how do you know, right? So when someone tweets it, I know when I'm on there, it's like, oh, great, something has come out. Someone's kind of talked about it, and if I have time to read it, I'll click the paper and I can actually read it on Twitter itself. So it's a good way to kind of keep up with current events in medical literature. Here's another example. So the Canadian Journal of Anesthesia always tweets the papers that they've been publishing. So they are even using the hashtag Peds Anesthesia, and this was a paper on face mask ventilation in paralyzed, unparalyzed children, and it was a RCT. So, you know, you have a quick summary, you have an image that might be of interest to you, and you can read the article right away. So, and I don't know if you guys got that email yesterday, they're actually not even publishing on paper anymore. They're asking people to pay $10 extra if you want the journal in your hand, because it's not worth the environmental costs and people just aren't reading it, I guess. So that's another good way to kind of keep up because you won't be getting in the mail anymore. Another thing that's really fascinating, so I'm actually the chair for communications for Society for Pediatric Pain Medicine. When we look at pediatric pain, it's not a huge community. This society is a branch of Society for Pediatric Anesthesia. So as a communications chair, I've been organizing Twitter journal clubs. So these are great. It's pretty much the same format of a regular journal club, except that instead of picking an article and meeting in a room, you do it virtually. So ahead of time, we'll pick an article. We'll ask everyone involved to kind of read it, and then we all meet at a certain time on Twitter and just kind of chat about it. And the last two I've organized have been great because I've actually been able to have the author come on Twitter and also talk about their paper as well. So it's been great. A lot of other societies are doing this. Surgeons have an international surgical journal club, radiologists, all the different specialties are trying to do this right now. And I know in anesthesia, the regional anesthesia guys are really into these type of journal clubs. And the last one I did, we had about, we reviewed this paper. So it wasn't, it's a pertinent topic is talking about opioid-sparing analgesics. It was a systematic review done by Dr. Anderson in Stanford, and he actually joined us for the tweet. And we kind of talked about all the different issues around opioids, children, and other options for managing pain without the use of opioids during the case. So a couple tweets just show what they look like. So we had a nurse practitioner kind of tweeting from Australia. Dr. Anderson, the author, was on there. We had Dr. Chidambaram, who's from Ohio. So we have people from all over kind of tweeting and talking about it, so it's really interesting. It's hard to get people to meet at a certain time, but even with about a couple weeks' notice, we had 17 people involved, which if you think about it, if we had a journal club, it's hard to get 17 of us in a room, so it's not too bad. And we had 87,000 impressions, so 87,000 people saw our tweets, and about 174 tweets, and this is just 1 hour on a Sunday. Yeah?
So the thing about this is that there's limited, you have to be very consistent
Yes. Yeah.
in what you're tweeting out.
Exactly, and it's all short. So tweets are only 280 characters, so it kind of limits people from going off rambling, kind of limiting that, and everyone has equal turns to kind of chat, ask questions. So it's really fascinating, and there's always different tweet chats going on. And I know even now with resident journal clubs, there are clubs where the residents are sitting in a room and someone's sitting on the computer and tweeting out what the residents are saying and asking for involvement from other places. So I think in North Carolina, Duke University Anesthesia Department is doing that now. They have it with the residents, and then they publicize it so other departments can join in. And this is just another example of kind of like the chat that happened. So I kind of mentioned something, the author of the paper replied, Dr. Granani, who's from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, kind of replied. So, you know, to get this many people in a room, it would be impossible. So that's kind of the power of social media. The other thing that's very popular, and the way that a lot of people get introduced to tweeting, is live tweeting during meetings. It's great for all of us because if you don't go to a meeting, you can actually virtually follow a meeting. So a lot of people will take pictures of slides. Usually people are asked to give credit to the person who's presenting. So there's there's some controversy with this. Some societies have actually banned people taking pictures of the slides, but I think there's been pushback, and people are now saying that you can't really do that. I mean, if you're talking about unpublished data, then you probably shouldn't be putting it on a slide anyways. But for the most part, most people are pretty open to allowing the pictures on. So this is just an example from the last ASA meeting. So you can see here hashtag NS18. So that was the hashtag for the meeting. So every tweet related to that would be under that hashtag. And even now you can go back and look at all the different tweets from that meeting, so it's pretty useful. And just an example of good tweets, so people will kind of, this is what we call a retweet, so you'll put the original tweet and then kind of make a comment to kind of stimulate discussion around it. And it's pretty, the ASA is a very, very active meeting on social media. This was just after the first 2 days of the meeting. I couldn't find the final one. In the first 2 days, it had 11 million impressions. And I mean, they had 1,000 people tweeting. It's pretty phenomenal. And these are all the top tweeters. So these are good. These are people who are very well known and are very amazing people to follow. And then another thing I want to discuss. So if you're not interested in the social media aspect, from an academic research standpoint, there's something called the altmetric score. So this actually looks at, if you publish a paper, what is the presence in the public of your paper? And they actually look at all these different things. They actually take into account tweets, Facebook, blog posts, how much it's shared. And I think the way things are going, people are actually looking at the score to see how your information is being disseminated. And a lot of journals now, when you are submitting, are actually asking for your Twitter handle, so that they'll advertise and say, you know, okay, this person's on Twitter, and you know, the authors can be reached in that way. So I think going forward, this will probably be more and more influential. And people have done papers on tweets. So there was actually a paper that looked at, can tweets predict citations? So if you tweet something and people are going to read your paper, does that lead to more citations and then thus increasing the profile of your work? And they did find that highly tweeted articles were 11 times more likely to be highly cited than less tweeted articles. So right now, we're already seeing that. And I was really happy to see that Harsha now is on Twitter, because it's great. I'm expecting that all the work that he does will now be publicized to the world, and he's already won awards. I'm sure when he goes to Azure and all these meetings, they're asking for him to be on there. So there is use in almost like a way of self-promoting. If you take all that work to publish, why not put it on Twitter and let people see it? The second aspect of social media, kind of like this cartoon, is the fact that we're supporting science and evidence. I'm sure everyone is now meeting patients who are kind of into, you know, I call it the granola crowd. You know, they're into, not, I guess, pseudoscience. The medical establishment is kind of looked at as not being friendly. We don't kind of accept what they think. But I think it's very important for us to be present on social media to kind of talk about that. And, you know, I know in my pediatric pain clinic, like most patients will Google stuff. I have patients who are self-diagnosing, coming and asking me, do I have this? What about this drug? So it's really good for us to be part of that conversation, direct the information on there. Because otherwise, it's just people directing it themselves. I recently read a blog post about a patient who talked about empty nose syndrome after turbinate surgery. I've never heard of this. I don't know if she invented it, but it was like a 3-page blog post talking about how she has no turbinates now and no resistance in her nose, and this is a real thing. And so there's a lot of stuff out there. And the thing with the internet, you can publish whatever you want. There's no editor saying you can't put that out there. So Lee A's is from the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic is at the forefront of social media. If you ever Google any medical diseases, Mayo Clinic all comes now almost #1. And they've actually taken a really good role in, if you Google something, that their results come first. And I think it's great because it's, you know, hospital physician-led information that the patients should see first on their Google searches. So he wrote, social media platforms are being used to discuss medically related issues, and absence of professionals diminishes the conversation quality. So people are going to be talking and using social media, and we should be a part of it to help direct it. And a paper from Canadian Family of Physician Medicine said that 70% of Canadians go online to search for medical or health-related information. It has been reported that the internet, rather than physicians, is the first source of information for many people. And I know in pre-op clinic with our pediatric patients, a lot of kids will tell me, yeah, I've seen YouTube videos of watching kids being induced under anesthesia. And maybe the time will come when those videos are made by us, not a child with a parent videotaping it. So people really, and the younger kids now, YouTube is their go-to for everything. So we should be there to kind of direct that. Engagement with patients and public. So this is, I just want to give an example of how physicians can really model and provide a space for patients. So my friend and colleague from Hopkins actually invented something called Liver Space. He made a Facebook page for all kids with liver disease in the United States. So instead of the parents forming a group, he formed it, he moderates it. It's fantastic. It's support for families. There's not many kids, unfortunately, who need liver transplants. They talk to each other. He actually recruits for research through it. They recruit giving advice about surgeons and giving advice around medical stuff. And it allows the physicians to guide the discussion. So they're involved in the process as well. And he's now being funded by the NIH for the work that he's doing with this liver space. And I think his plan is to move on to kidney disease, heart disease, all in the pediatric realm using Facebook. The next part of social media is basically maintenance of a professional profile. So I know a couple of us are on Twitter here. Here are some examples. I know Canadian-wise, Dr. McCartney from Ottawa is very popular on Twitter. He has 2,600 followers. He's always on there. He tweets a lot of meetings. The other two big people are Dr. Mariano, Dr. Stiegler. Dr. Mariano has basically built a public presence just on Twitter. His main role now is speaking throughout the world on social media, regional anesthesia. He's become very popular. Dr. Stiegler is from North Carolina. She talks about issues around women in academia. She's a public speaker as well. She has a website. She talks all over the place. I think she's actually cut back on her anesthesia work because of that. Okay, so I wanted to just go through how to get started with social media, hoping that some of you will be recruited. So first thing to do is create an account for professional purposes only. So my suggestion is to keep Twitter should just be professional. So try not to post about your children, what you ate, because you're going to lose it. People are going to lose interest. No one wants to hear all that stuff. A lot of people use Facebook for personal stuff, Twitter for professional. I always say post a professional picture, not your ID picture, not with like a mask hanging down. People take nice headshots. I know at McMaster there's actually opportunities to get professional pictures taken to use for your social media presence to encourage it. And just remember, once you post something online, it exists forever. You can delete it, but there will be records of it. And it's important. You need to treat social media very carefully. I'll give you a couple examples. At Hopkins, we had a resident who was doing a trauma case and posted a picture of the patient's face. And you have to be very careful not posting any patient-related issues. And even if it's not a picture, for example, if there's an accident in Hamilton, okay, and you tweet in such a way that the details are very obvious that there's only one accident that night and you're taking care of that person who's in that accident, you have to be careful because people can put two and two together and figure out that, you actually invaded my privacy and you talked about my case. And I think it's very important. I know in our hospital where there are some clinicians who are posting pictures of patients in the ICU setting. I'm still not into it. I think it's very important that there is a hierarchy, and even asking a patient for permission to post, I think that, I don't know, I just feel like they're not able to consent when we're in that position of power. So I personally never post anything of any of my patients. And I try to keep details very, very vague and I'm sure a lot of you have seen, even with the CPSO, there have been issues with physicians acting inappropriately, bullying each other. There's a lot, especially in stuff happening in Ontario. There's a lot of stuff happening on social media. So it's just good. If you're ever in doubt, always think about what you're posting. And if you have any doubt, just don't post it because things do live forever. And there have been people I know in Ontario from CPSO who have been disciplined for their behavior online. So it's important to know what you're doing. When engaging with the public, I tweet a lot about pediatric pain and chronic pain. I have people sending me direct messages asking me questions. It's always important to make sure that you are letting people know this is not medical advice. And it's always the best if they do come to you just to say, go to your physician because you can always have issues with what you say. Not too much of a problem for us, I think, as anesthesiologists, but I think for other clinicians like surgeons who get to know their patients quite well, you might receive friend requests from patients, or people might want to interact with you. I think it's best not to kind of keep that patient-doctor relationship kind of clear. You shouldn't be adding anyone to your personal profiles. And in terms of time management, I think it's a great idea to use Twitter, but don't let it overtake your life. There's a lot of people, it's a real issue. We see a lot of adolescents who are just on there all the time. There are ways with the hashtags, like I said, to limit and kind of not waste your time reading things that are important to you. And avoid interactions with trolls. There actually are some anesthesia trolls. So these are people where you will post something and they always have something snarky to say, or, I recently posted a picture of how to do an A-line in a kid and I got attacked by some anesthesiologist from Halifax who's like, this is crazy, why would you do it that way? So there's always people who are just letting out their frustration on social media. Best thing to do is just ignore them because we all know there's 10,000 ways to do one thing in anesthesia. And yeah, it's just, once you get into that negative trolling, it just goes downhill. There's a physician in Toronto, Dr. David Gerling, who's very vocal in the opioid issue. So he's quite funny. He actually does engage with the trolls, but it's interesting to see what happens. His main issue is he hates tramadol, so he's always telling people that tramadol is going to kill you and it's crazy if we use it, but he'll engage with trolls and other physicians about why it's a bad thing to do. And I thought this was a funny quote. We trust physicians with sharp instruments and narcotics. With proper training, we can handle Facebook and Twitter too. I think so. Okay, so I'm just going to get, Twitter can seem overwhelming, so I'll just quickly go through how to make a profile. So you sign up, it's easy, you put your email. I would suggest that you use your personal email, not your work email, to sign up. You can make a profile, get a nice profile picture. I happen to have a picture from the OR, so you have like a header picture and a personal picture. This is limited characters, so try to choose what is really important to you. And you can actually put hashtags in your description, so when people click Peds Pain, my name comes up. And that kind of is already establishing, like, this is my niche area, and I'm going to talk about this. Always good to link your academic university. I don't write that whole thing like retweets aren't endorsements, because I don't believe that. I think if you're on social media with your real name, whatever you say should be done carefully and should be taken seriously. And I guess legally, if you put McMaster U, you are a representative of the university, so you have to be careful about that too. So, you know, we see it sometimes. People make inappropriate comments that could be construed as being unfriendly to certain groups and demographics. So you have to remember, when you link any institution, you are representing your institution, and there could be retributions if you don't act appropriately. And just the basics of Twitter, because there might be some terms everyone's not familiar with. So when you refer to someone, you put @ and their handle name. So that's what the @ means. Hashtag, like I said, is just, it's not pound, it's called hashtag now. So some of you might still call it pound, it's now hashtag. When you click on the hashtag, you see all the tweets containing that topic. A mention means that there are other accounts in your tweet, and then you can just say, for example, I can write about something and put @Mac Anesthesia. Like our department has a Twitter account. You can tag the department so that they kind of see it, and it increases exposure. A like, it just means there's a little heart button. You can like it, and that you actually can, once you like something, you have a list of your likes. So if you want to go back and think, oh, I read that article on Twitter, but I didn't get to read it, you can go back and see all the likes, and that also adds to the exposure for that person's tweet as well. A retweet means that you're just taking someone's tweet and posting it on your page so that everyone can see it, and that increases visibility. A reply means that you have a tweet and you just respond below it. It's a good way to interact with the original tweeter. Direct message is just a way to privately message someone, so that is not something that will be published for everyone to see. Timeline are all the tweets that you see presented in chronological order, and I'm going to show you on my phone. And a follower is someone who just wants to follow you and will see everything that you're writing about. So I think I have about 1,700 followers. That was over 2 years. So it takes time to actually gain followers. And if you don't post appropriately, you might irritate people or unfollow you. So it's kind of like a game. Try not to get too caught up in the popularity aspect of it. And this was actually taken from a paper written by Dr. Matava at SickKids and Dr. Guy, who's a new staff there. They actually published all the hashtags that are relevant to anesthesiologists. So kind of a nice little quick chart if you're starting to tweet that you want to use the existing hashtags that are there. And it's kind of fascinating. Social media is such an open field. People are like easily getting published. Like this was an actual paper in anesthesia and analgesia. So, and Dr. Matava does a lot of technology-based stuff. So any paper he writes, he's getting into really high impact journals, and it is making an impact on the field. And this is just a map of all my followers. So I have people following me in Africa, Australia, someone in Russia, a lot of South Americans. Most of my followers are from the States. So it's kind of fascinating how you can really reach out to the entire world. And I don't have anyone from Kazakhstan or Mongolia, but I can aim for that, I guess. Okay, so I was going to try to show you how to tweet. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah.
About the hashtag, does the Twitter, does it automatically group things under hashtags?
Yeah. So here's an example. So I tweeted today that I'm excited to present grand rounds to my department. Twitter, I hashtagged anesthesiologist. I tagged Mac Anesthesia. And HHS actually has a hashtag myHHS. So I just tag as much as you can. So an example of how hashtags work, so I'm going to click on anesthesiologist.
So you have to actually tag your
in the tweet.
Your tweet
to curate it.
To curate it, to have it mapped out.
Exactly. Yep. So I click.
It won't just exist on its own.
No, exactly. It won't link to anything. So I just clicked on anesthesiologist, and now you can see all the different tweets about anesthesia. So So that's how it works. And an example of like my HHS. So these are all the people from Hamilton Health Sciences who are tweeting. And another example would be, so peds anesthesia, the one that I talked about. You can go to latest, and these are all, so when I go latest, these are the latest ones. So sometimes in the morning I'll go on. So there's actually someone I know, Dr. Greenberg, he tweeted about an article about preoperative gastric ultrasound. So it's a nice way to just see the new articles going up. You'll get to know which people are tweeting really good things. Here you have like top influencers of peds anesthesia. And it's just, that's how everything's curated. You can see here the paper I talked about with the Canadian Journal of Anesthesia. This is like, for example, here's a good thing here. Open anesthesia is related to FAIR and ASA. So they have an open anesthesia podcast. They're doing one coming up this month on pharmacology and art of induction in kids. So you can just see it's a good way to kind of limit what you're going to read. If I just do this, I'm only going to read everything on peds anesthesia. And the same way you can curate other articles as well. And most people you can follow who you want to, but most people, for the better part of it, limit their tweets to professional content. So kind of prevents too much background noise going on. And just to show how to tweet, so you just hit this blue button here. And you would just type whatever you want, put your hashtags in. You can even tag your location, and everything will kind of link into tweeting. You can add a picture by clicking on picture here, and you can take pictures and add it to your tweet as well. So that's about it. Yeah?
I went on a tweet about 3 years ago, something to do with simulation world.
Yep.
And I didn't know how to use it, so I got texts from bimbos who were saying that making love to a girl was better than making love to a boy or something crazy like that. And I thought, forget that. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd like to know how to filter this, because I really didn't ask for it. I can show you.
Okay. Well, I just clicked on one person. So I don't know if you know Dr. Betsy Hunt. She's a pediatric ICU doctor at Hopkins. Very, very well known in CPR and simulation work. So I think the best thing was just to find a hashtag. Usually it will limit it. And you can block out the noise. If there's inappropriate messages from people, you can block people.
I don't know why I got it.
I don't know. I can help you.
I didn't ask for it.
Yeah. Like, for example, she does CPR coaching, so you can click on that hashtag and just see stuff around CPR quality, things like that. Yeah.
I was just wondering how many patients and parents are direct messaging you privately.
Not that many.
It happens though?
It's very rare. It's mostly people trolling. Like, for example, the big thing on Twitter now, if you talk about opioids not being needed for chronic pain, there's a whole army of people who don't agree with that we're being unkind, inhumane. I know Jason Bussey recently got into a little interaction with someone who was kind of attacking that he authored the opioid guidelines. So it's more things like that. I don't get too many direct messages. And you can block and turn off your messaging if you don't want it. Yeah. Yeah, Bruno.
Two questions. One is, I've been trying to use Twitter, but I have, for a long time I've been trying to, I don't have like a trigger. Like, what is it that triggers you? Like, oh, I can tweet that. Like, what triggers you
Okay.
to go into Twitter and tweet?
Okay, so okay, so for example, let me see here. Just trying to do this. Okay, so Harsha wrote, we got an email, right, that Harsha had written a nice article about Ehlers-Danlos. I take care of a lot of Ehlers-Danlos patients, so I thought, okay, I took a picture of the abstract and I tweeted out that he wrote this article. I tagged his name in there somewhere. Yep, I tagged Harsha MD5. And it just started discussion because I interact with so many people who do pediatric pain. I thought it was a good paper. So things like that. I don't take too many. When I go to meetings, I'll take pictures of a lot of screenshots. I think when I'm on there, if I see something that I think other people find useful, I will tweet it. It's kind of a good way for me to keep, like, I thought this was a really interesting tweet. Harsha tweeted, U.S. patients rate their pain worse than patients from other countries, which we have, I think we've had presentations on that too, and I thought it was a really fascinating article. He linked to the article here, and it was just looking at pain scores in orthopedic patients in the United States versus the rest of the world, and as expected, Americans have insanely much higher pain scores. So I things like that. I thought it was, he was at some meeting in Europe when he tweeted that, so then I retweeted it, so just things like that. And for me, it's a really good way to keep up with the latest literature, because I don't know how else you would find all these articles. Especially now, people are publishing random journals, not all in the top journals that we expect to look at. Yeah.
And the other question that I have is like, I have obviously moved forward. Let's say I have
Yeah.
ultrasound from the spine and
Yep.
I have wellness, right?
Yep.
So should I have like an account for?
No. Yeah, no, because I do peds pain, I do peds anesthesia, I do social media. It's kind of representing what you do in your life, right? Like you do clinical stuff, you do academic, you do teaching. Like I think recently I did like a clerkship airway thing, so I tweeted a picture of that. I mean, as long as you're protecting people's privacy and doing, it should represent you, what you do on a daily basis. I mean, I wouldn't post pictures of lunch and all that stuff because then people get bored, but you could if you want. Great. So I think that was it. Hopefully I convinced some of you to join Twitter. The great thing at Twitter too, there are times that I just don't use it at all and you can just come back, so that's another nice thing. It can get exhausting sometimes too, and I know personally I try not to keep my phone near me. And I am wary of social media. Like I'm on Facebook because I'm on communications chair, but I don't like Facebook particularly. I think they follow you too much, but all these, I think our privacy is pretty much dead at this point, so you just have to be careful of what you post. And I don't think it's an issue in Canada, but I know in the States, like lawyers say that all of this is discoverable, everything you tweet, and you have to be careful. In the States, people are even talking about should you be tweeting while you're providing anesthesia? What if something goes wrong and they have a timestamp that, oh, when that case went bad, you were tweeting about like a cat video. So, everything's discoverable, you have to be careful. Yeah.
I was going to point out several cases now where Anesthesiologist was sued and they was the phone record.
Yeah.
You see the guy actually being anesthetic on a phone and
Yeah.
looking at something else.
Yep. It's true. I mean, technology is moving faster than we are, so we have to be really careful with what we do. But I think if you're careful, it can be a great tool. And I think for meetings, it's really fun to live tweet at meetings. They even have tweet ups now where all the Twitter people will meet up in a room and do all sorts of stuff. ASA, it's huge. I think there's like 50 people who do it. So it's a great way to meet people. And I don't know a lot of these people, but I feel like I know them. I talk to them all the time. So. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.